What's up, everyone? This is the Fraser LeVay podcast, and we're talking travel today. It was sports heavy during the NFL season. Now we're talking travel, and I don't have a guest because we're talking Paris, and no one wanted to jump up and talk Paris with me. Paris, incredible. I mean, you don't really need a podcast or a blog to tell you go to Paris. But this podcast will go over some tips, where to stay, really some essential things you need to know, and just a quick, fast guide for Paris first timers. I think a big thing with Paris is it's overwhelming as heck. I mean, it's enormous. There's so many things to do and overwhelming. Absolutely. So you just want to go and be like, where do I stay? What are the main things to do? And that's why I'm here. Um, my first few things that I just thought about with Paris when I arrived was it's enormous. It's similar to New York in the feeling of the skyscrapers, but in Paris, it's a land of giants where everything's sideways. Like all the structures are so historical and gorgeous and are, I don't know, 12 to 15 stories high, but then they're also wide. And then the clocks are enormous. Everything just seems so grandiose. It's stunning. And, you're kind of back in history with all the architecture. And I don't know if it's a Gothic style. I'm not a architect person. I just look at things and I know if they're nice or not. But whatever style it is, it's truly stunning. And so many neighborhoods, which they call Andorra. I always butcher the. And so there's neighborhoods in Paris, 20 of them or something like that. And the term for them is, let me spell it out, arrondissement. Arrondissement, which is just neighborhoods, communities, which we'll get to. But enormous. And then also Paris spares no expense, which sounds right. I mean, when you think about French Paris, it's wealthy. It should be, elegant, all of those things. And it is. Even just cafes on the corner, restaurants on the corner that just look like standard restaurants. Of course, they're a little bit prettier, but the napkins are thick. The utensils are high quality. The food presentation's immaculate, even at the smallest places. Just there's no detail skipped and there's no expense spared. Where I feel like in the US or other places, it's sort of be as efficient as you can, not to say cheap, but cheap, whatever you can just to get, turn around a profit. Where Paris, it's just everything is so elegant from cheap places to expensive places. It really spares no expense. And everything's just kind of exquisite. These storefronts, everything. The attention to detail is just great. But as mentioned, it can be overwhelming. So let's get into simplifying some things, and we'll start with just your trip. The most important tip for Paris first timers comes along with how long to stay in Paris. Please stay 5 to 7 days. People will tell you, most people, oh, it's just a visit for 2, 3 days and get out of there. Nothing could be further from the truth. Yes, it's busy. What large city isn't? Go to Paris knowing you're visiting a New York, a London, a Sydney, a major metropolis. But that's part of its charm. That's part of what makes it amazing. There's so much to do and see and just relax. The number one mistake travelers and new travelers make, which I wrote a full article about, and I think I even have a podcast on it, is just going to a place to check it off your bucket list, rushing from point A to point B, check, check, check. We need to slow down. Enjoy Paris. Don't just, okay, I saw the Louvre, I saw the Eiffel Tower, we ate whatever it is, let's leave. No, there, you can walk in Paris or bike in Paris for days and see something new and something beautiful. It truly is just such an enchanting city with the cafes and the restaurants. I mean, stop at a cafe all the time, have a cappuccino, a coffee, whatever it is, a bottle of wine, eat, relax, people watch on the sand, do all of these things, but just slow it down and don't have an itinerary of, okay, today we're going to the Louvre, we're going to the Eiffel Tower, we're going to this, and then you're just rushing, not enjoying any of your time. It's not, you may have a 7 or 10 day trip or a 14-day trip to Europe, don't squeeze 5 cities into this. Pick 2 and enjoy 2. Or 1 in this case, like 5-7 days. And we'll get to some things you can do in that 5 to 7 days in Paris and still see more of France. But time needs to slow down. It's not a bucket list competition to say, oh, I went here and there. There's so much to do in Paris. There's so many things to take in and just breathe and feel the city and enjoy it versus rush from A to B. And you've had those vacations where just you're going, and you don't sit still, you don't relax. So it's time to relax. It's about experiencing and feeling the destination you're in, not necessarily just seeing something and saying, okay, we saw the Louvre. Like, no, relax. You also forget on these trips a huge point, another mistake travelers make. Let's say you're going to Europe for 7 days and you're going to Paris and you're like, all right, well, Paris, or even 5 days. We go to Paris for 3 days and we can go somewhere else for 3 days and it'll be perfect. Well, no, you forget the travel time. When you land in Paris, and let's say your flight's perfectly on time, by the time you get bags, go through customs, walk to the train, take the train, get off the train, walk to wherever you're going, you're losing half a day. So if you land at 1 p.m., by the time you're like truly settled, unpacked, it could be 6, 7 p.m. And then if you try and do that, like let's say you go to, we did it correctly. I had 5 days in Paris, 6 days in Paris, and 4 or 5 days in Venice. A lot of people, and I even thought about, hey, why don't I squeeze one more city in? I didn't, because it's just exactly what I've been saying. We left our Airbnb at 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. By the time we checked into our Venice hotel, and Venice is only a 2-hour flight, I want to say, away. So it's like, oh, Venice is so close. Amsterdam so close. It's just a 1-hour or 2-hour flight. We'll be there and right away. No, we left at 10 a.m. We didn't get into our place and unpacked ish until 11 p.m. in Venice. We lost an entire day. The same thing goes backwards. We went Venice to Paris. I mean, yes, we had a 2-hour flight delay, but this is going to happen to you at some point. So you don't want to count on, okay, if I leave Paris at 10 and my flight's at 12, then I'll be in Venice sipping, what's my, Hugo. Hugo's so good. We'll talk about Venice later. But the Hugo drink is my favorite spritz of all time. But yeah, we're leaving our place at 10 a.m. and we'll be in Venice at 2 p.m. No. That's not how it works. So do not just try and throw tons of cities in, because you will forget, you will lose almost an entire day traveling. And what comes with an entire day traveling? Grumpiness, hunger, many things. So let's not, I don't know if you're like a couple that fights on vacation, but don't add more reasons to fight on vacation when you're already upset, you're grumpy, you're hot, sweaty because there isn't AC in the train or whatever else. Take your time between cities. So that is my big tip for Paris. And I've got more, but slow down. Don't squeeze multiple cities in. I would suggest 5 days, 4 nights minimum in Paris, but even 6 days is fine. Because like I said, there's so much to see and do and relax and just enjoy Paris. Like you don't have to travel anywhere just to see the Eiffel Tower, just to see this. No, just enjoy it like you live there. Go wake up, grab bread and cheese from the grocery store and have a cup of coffee down the street and go, you don't have to just see tourist spots. Enjoy the city. I mean, I live in a place now, and even when I lived in Phoenix more, I it wasn't like really walkable. It's so spread out. I love being in Paris because you just walk out your door to a coffee shop, to a restaurant, to a bar, to a cafe. It was just so nice to be able to be within walking distance of everything. It was just a nice change of place. I'd rather stay there and feel like I'm living there for a week or so than just, okay, we have to go see this. And I beat that to death though. I'm going to beat it down more, but for now, let's move on. Before you go to Paris, another huge tip, download these apps. Also, remember, you need data on your phone to use apps. So stop using a SIM card like a Pilgrim. This is 2025. There's a thing called an eSIM where you don't need to go somewhere physically and get a SIM card, put it in your phone, have a new phone number. No, we're not settlers anymore. Travel, not like a boomer. No offense, boomers. eSIMs, they can be a little bit hard to install in terms of like sometimes you have to change 10 different settings. But once you get that all figured out, I use Airolo, I forget. Yeah, Airolo, Air ALO, and incredible. It's, affordable. They have different price plans, and then you have data. You don't change your number, which is huge for me because I'm sure many of you work while you're on vacation or whatever, and you don't want to have to change your phone number. So use that. So download eSIM. Then there's the greatest travel app I've ever had or seen in my entire life. Yes, the greatest app you will have for travel. It's called Citymapper. It's in 100 cities, just over 100 cities right now. Hopefully, it's going to spread around the world. It's immaculate. Basically, it tells you how to get from point A to point B with every cost, time, distance, and everything. A perfect example, you land in Paris and there's multiple ways to get to your hotel. You can Uber, you can train, you can taxi, you can walk. I guess you won't walk. I guess there's not a ton of ways to get there, but there's ways, right? Should I Uber or should I train? Is a simple one. Well, it tells you you walk 8 minutes from your terminal, your baggage terminal, to the train station, get your ticket, train station, train takes XYZ to whatever stop you're going, and then exit. Because some of the train stations in Paris, there's like 7 different exits, especially the main one that I was at that had bomb threats. It was during the Olympics, so it's not a common occurrence. I can't remember. It's the main train station in town, but it's got like 10 different exits. If you come out one exit, you could be on the opposite, like 2 blocks away from where you should come out, and walk the opposite way. So, um, Citymapper will tell you which exit to leave out of and then how far to walk it is to your hotel. So it gives you literally every step by step and the cost. It'll tell you the train ticket costs $7, whatever it is. Then if you want to Uber or Bolt, so download Uber, I'm sure you have it, and Bolt is another Uber they use there. Those two, and just compare prices each time. Bolt's typically cheaper. Um, so you have those downloaded, so you can Uber or Bolt, but they also tell you the time. So it says for your walk to the train station, train ride, wait for the train, walk from the train station to your hotel, it'll take 2 hours. Uber will take 50 minutes. Uber is also maybe 3 times the cost, maybe 10 times the cost if it's surging. So something that you can juggle, like, you know what, I've had a long travel day. I just want to get to where I'm going. I'm not going to walk 10 minutes, then wait in a line for a train ticket, then wait for the train, be crammed with people, most likely, with your luggage, and then carry my luggage on like cobblestone streets. Not as ideal. Now, I'm not here to scare you away from the train. I'm just saying use your money and your time efficiently. So sometimes spending $40, $50 for an Uber is much better than if there's two you spending $20 on a train ticket when you'll save an hour and a ton of stress. You just had maybe a 14-hour flight, a 20-hour flight. Maybe just take Uber in this instance. Then you can save money, train, bike, and all that for the rest of your trip. But as you can see, a bit of a theme we have going is let's stop stressing on vacation. It is vacation. Okay? Spend a little extra, even if we don't have it. A big thing I always tell people who ask me, a main tip you have for travel is spend a little extra, even if you're broke. You're not going to remember $500 that you spent more than you wanted to in Paris in 10 years. You will remember your Paris memories because you just don't want to be stressed. Like the train example, you don't want to be walking and then blah, blah, and it's 2.5 hours by the time you get to your hotel from getting your bags. It's sweaty because there's no AC on the trains, I think. Pretty sure there isn't on the main one. Crammed with people, stressed. It's just a lot. And you've just traveled for 20 hours. So you know what? I'm going to spend $50, $75 on an Uber. So we get to our hotel faster and we can just go have a glass of wine and unwind after a long day and enjoy it because that's what it's about. And sometimes money brings happiness. There, I said it. Money does bring happiness. But again, even if you don't have money, it's fine. You'll make $500 back more in 5 years, in 2 years, in 1 year, in 6 weeks. Spend a bit more enjoy your time, and stop rushing. Those are the biggest tips I could give you for traveling. I think. I'm sure there's more. I got caught up in the heat of the moment. But so City Mapper, all one word. Download that now. It's incredible. And then I also said Uber and Bolt, and then Lime. Lime, Paris is the greatest city, I want to say, for biking in the world. I don't know if that's a fact. I'm going to say it is. I haven't been everywhere. But it's like they perfectly designed it for bicycling, like with their bike lanes, bike stoplights, everything. It was an actual plan by the city. So you can bike everywhere, and it's normally quicker than an Uber when you're like doing stuff in town, obviously not from the airport. But yeah, so there's limes everywhere, and there is a couple other bikes. There's a few different bike options. Let me remember what the other two are called: DOTT or VLib, VELIB. So those are a couple other you can add just in case Lime isn't accessible. And remember, you need data to use these, so do get an eSIM. And also, Lime's kind of annoying. They're all annoying where you have to park them in certain spots. Sometimes you think Lime you can just put anywhere you want, but they're actually like, it'll notice that it's not in a parking spot for Lime. So you'll have to move around a bit. That can be frustrating, but whatever. So download the bike app. I'll talk more about how biking is the best thing to do, or I can just tell you right now, biking is my favorite thing to do in Paris. Let's get into it. My other biggest trip, my other biggest tip for Paris is don't have an itinerary and just bike or walk if you want to walk, but bike is better everywhere. Your first day, go to a cafe, grab a coffee, some baked good, get on a bike and just go. Go in a direction of a place, like go in the direction of Notre Dame or the Eiffel Tower, whatever you want, or the Louvre, depending on where you're staying. But go in that direction, but make sure it's far away, and you will see half the places that you have on your itinerary on the bike ride, along with a million other smaller things you might never see. And then you know what? Stop for another coffee. Stop for a glass of wine. Stop for more baked goods. Stop for lunch. But just bike and bike and bike and go along the River Seine and enjoy it. Don't have we have to go here, we have to go there. Sure, you can do that later in your trip, but on this day, just go enjoy life. Be outside, bicycling, some fresh-ish air. And yeah, and there's just so many gorgeous sights, especially if you just bike along the river, you'll see, I don't know, 80% of the main attractions. Now, of course, you're going to go into those at one point, but your first trip, just bike by them. It's so pretty. Again, like I said earlier, the architecture is amazing. And that's the biggest tip I have is your first day or two, don't have an itinerary. Just bike and see what you bump into and really soak in the city, enjoy the city, stuff yourself with food and drink. It's so good. But yeah, that's my biggest tip or second biggest tip. I can't remember which one's better, but for Paris and really just travel in general. I'm a big walk the city guy, like Rome. Just get lost and you'll bump into everything, and it's so walkable. I guess just like that, Paris is so bikeable. It's incredible. On the apps, also Google at this point does everything, so you can just use the Google currency converter and language. You can just talk into Google. Gemini is also the Chat GPT, Google's Gemini version. Very helpful. You really could just shut down this podcast and never read my blog, and Gemini will just tell you everything. But don't do that because I have a baby and I don't want to be broke. So thanks for supporting. Speaking of supporting, make sure you follow the YouTube channel, the Fraser Levay YouTube channel, and inspiretraveleat.com is the blog for tons of travel itineraries. And I also have faneverland.com is my sports website. And I recently wrote a book and started a book series for children called Learn with Lukai, which is named after my new son. And yeah, it's about how to learn soccer. It's great for 3 to 8-year-olds. Basketball's coming next. So go check that out on Amazon. Learn with Lukai. All right, moving back to Paris after our quick commercial cameo. You landed in Paris. What's next? So, City Mapper app. Boom. We're done. Literally just put here's where I'm going. It'll tell you exactly how to get there and which methods will get you there, how long, the cost, all of that. Incredible. So that's simple. Already an app just did everything you wanted and needed. Where to stay in Paris for first timers. This can be ridiculously overwhelming. Paris is enormous. There are 20 arrondissements, which, as mentioned, are the neighborhoods. They're all in a clockwise spiral, starting at the center of the city and ending in the far east. You can't really go wrong with staying in any of the like 1 to 8 arrondissements. Even like the 10th, if you're on a budget, it's a kind of up and coming place. So that's not bad. There's no real awful place to stay, but there are 3 or 4 you should stay at for first timers. So the best arrondissement to stay in Paris for first timers, number one is the first. It's more expensive, but it's right in the heart of Paris, and it's near everything. It's near the Louvre. It's near the River Seine. It's just got everything: restaurants, bars, cafes, a ton. So if you can stay in the first, the third and the fourth compromise an area known as La Marais, which is very cool. It's loved by people. It's historic, slightly cheaper than the first, a bit more of an authentic feel, still touristy, but not as higher end as the first arrondissement. And the seventh is another favorite, but that's right where the Eiffel Tower is located. So as you can imagine, it's probably the number one tourist mecca in Paris. And just, but you're in Paris being a tourist. So that's not frowned upon. You can be a tourist and not be ashamed. So go to the seventh. Again, it's a little bit more expensive just because it is right by the Eiffel Tower. If you want something a little bit cheaper and more authentic-ish, the fifth and sixth is the Latin Quarter and the Saint Germain des Prés, which are just good spots, a touch cheaper, historic, unique. Notre Dame is right there by the Latin Quarter. Tons of really cool food places and like unique food places. But like I said, really, you can stay in any. I would just try and stay more central. And really, as I mentioned, like 1 through 8 are fine to stay in. Just do an Airbnb or a hotel search and find the best value. That would be the best tip for where to stay in Paris. Look at the 1 through 8, the map, which you can just do your little circle on your hotel search or your Airbnb search, and find great value, a place with incredible ratings. Maybe it's often offering a deal, and stay there. Because as long as you're kind of in the heart, which is 1 through 8 arrondissement, you can't go wrong. It's safe, very walkable, very bikeable, around everything you want to be in. So just find an immaculate hotel, wherever that is, if that's in the first, in the third, in the fourth, in the fifth. Just find a great place to stay with incredible reviews and do that. But like I said, first is my favorite, although it is more expensive. Third and fourth, then the seventh, then the fifth and sixth, and then 10th if you're on a budget. Like I says, up and coming and good for the budget conscious. The second is not listed as you are listed on my website, which is because it's the business hub. So there's not really many residential places, and it's not really built for tourists. So that's why you wouldn't really ever stay in the second. But you would see that when you do a hotel or Google search. So that's where you should stay. And moving on to the must do things. You really don't need this podcast to tell you the top 10 things to do in Paris. So I'll try and make it a touch unique. And again, the number one thing I already mentioned, don't have an itinerary. Just go bike around or walk around and just see what pops up along the way. I'll continue to bang this drum so you get it through your head. You can, of course, I would say, so like you have to buy tickets for the Louvre and other things. Maybe just buy one ticket a day. So then you're like, all right, I know at 1 p.m. I have to get to the Louvre for our trip there. But do not have like 1 p.m. we have the Louvre, 4 p.m. we have the Eiffel Tower tickets, and just 7 p.m. you have what's the other thing I'm going to talk about that I love? The catacombs, which you have to have tickets for. Just try and spread things out. Or maybe if you have to put 2 in a day, that's fine. But don't just make it like one day. It's like bang, bang, bang. Relax, enjoy your time. The Louvre, you could spend 8 hours there, literally. We rushed through it, and I think it was 3 or 4. So people also forget that you're going to be tired. Your feet are going to be sore. You're going to be thirsty. You're going to be hungry. So going back to my big point about biggest tip for travel is leave space in between things and just relax. So you're done with the Louvre and you can just go walk across the street and drink a whole bottle of wine because your feet are going to be super sore, and drink a lot of water and eat. Don't be like, oh my god, we have to rush to our ticket at the Eiffel Tower. Hurry! And now you haven't eaten. You don't have a bottle of wine. Which what the fuck are we doing here? And you don't have a coffee. This sounds like the worst trip ever. Slow down. Enjoy your vacation. That is what it is about. So I've beaten that to death like I told you I would. Favorite thing to do in Paris, aside from that, is eat. Paris might be the best place I've ever visited for cuisine. I was just thinking about it as we went around to all these places, and it has to be one of the biggest melting pots in the world, which, I mean, probably not breaking news here since it's a major metropolis, it's close to Africa, it's in Europe. But there's just so many ethnicities, which means the food choices are immaculate. I loved it, like living in Scottsdale, Phoenix, and living in Costa Rica now. It's not really like cuisine hotspots, you know? Sure, I can eat, I don't know, basic food. Um, where in, sorry, I got a text, threw me off. Just eat basic food, right? Where in Paris, it's like, do you want to try Lebanese cuisine? Do you want to try hot pot from Vietnam? Do you want to try African food, which I've really never eaten African food before, which I went to this great African place. Unreal. And sorry, I just said Africa as a blanket term, but there's Asian food. So, and I know I said Hong Kong or Vietnam before. So, but point being, like every country in the Middle East, every country in Asia, every country in Africa, there is just multiple thousands of places to eat. And then Parisian food is, it's really good, escargot and everything else. So enjoy eating. Just be a glutton. There's so many unique places to try and eat. Make sure you make this down on your list. Try a new cuisine every single day, at least every second day. So it's just, when will you ever get that chance again? Like I said, I've traveled the world. I've lived in multiple cities. Where I live now between two places, I don't have options to go have a Lebanese restaurant within walking distance, a Korean restaurant within walking distance, a African restaurant within walking distance. It was just so cool to experience all these different cultures, authentic food. All tasted so good. So that's a really fun part about being in Paris, is it's such a huge melting pot of different ethnicities, which makes the cuisine options terrific. And then of course, just there's so many patios. Everywhere's a patio. Sure, you're kind of crammed in tight, which sucks, but that's how it is. Sit on the patio, have your coffee, have your bottle of wine, eat, people watch, and just watch the time go by. It's incredible. I love it. Other best things to do, the Louvre, not groundbreaking. It might be my favorite, but has nothing to do with the painting, like the Mona Lisa or the Venus de Milo, all that sort of thing. It was more just the grounds and the architecture. Again, it was just math. Like the Louvre is 10 times the size I thought it would be. Normally we see like, oh, here's a museum, but it's 8 giant museums glued together. And then there's like the Jardin de Tuileries. I don't know how to pronounce it. But a giant garden right next to it. And you just go through this place that it's beyond words how big it is. One room is a football field. It's crazy. So go check that out. Obviously, you have to see the main things in there, but my favorite part was the Salle de Caryatide. So it's Salle, Salle de Caryatides, if I pronounce it like that, which is just an enormous area full of Greek and Roman sculptures. I thought it was the prettiest area inside. It was just, this one part of it was wide open, like 10 gymnasiums, maybe not 10, 4 gymnasiums high and long, with all these sculptures and lighting, and it was stunning. So really a big fan. And the Eiffel Tower, obviously you can go up it, so I don't need to tell you about the Eiffel Tower. The Champs-Élysées and the Arc de Triomphe are right next to each other. Yes, the Champs-Élysées, you probably know that song. I'm going to Oh, Champs-Élysées. Ooh, I think it's on a commercial that was very made it even more popular for young kids who didn't know that song. But yeah, have that song playing in your head the whole time you go through the Champs Elysees, and the Arc de Triomphe is right there. You can climb to the top of that. Another favorite place I had and visited was Catacombs of Paris, where just a quick history cliff notes. I may be a little bit off, but basically they had all these people die because of famine and I think war and like disease. But basically, tons of people were dying, and they had nowhere to put them because, of course, Paris used to be a real small kind of area before it expanded, and so they ended up making a big burial grounds underneath the city. I think is like the short, quick version of it. And now you've got, I don't know, it was tens, hundreds of thousands of people and their bones down there. Which, when you think about it, you're like, oh, I'm looking at 100,000 dead people. It's kind of weird. I thought about that just the other day. I was like, oh, it's kind of weird when you think about it that way, which is really what it is. But it's heavy. I mean, it's really cool. Check it out. It's million, one in a million type things you can do. I mean, I've never done a catacombs type thing. I guess I have. Rome has one, and then not Colombia, Cambodia has their killing fields, which is just more sad, actually. Check that out. More than the saddest things I've ever seen. Those are the killing fields in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh. Anyways, back to Paris. If you have time, the Palace of Versailles is it's a day trip. So I would only do this if you're staying 5 to 7 days. Notre Dame Cathedral, the Latin Quarter, which Notre Dame is basically right there. The Pantheon, Le Marais. I guess before I just list off these places, actually I've got four more, and then I've got another important thing I want to tell you before you. We're almost done this podcast, so you're not missing out. Do not end this podcast soon, because aside from listing off places, I'm going to tell you a great day trip idea. So, anyways, the Pantheon, another stunning structure, and the whole surrounding kind of area is nice around there. Le Marais, which is that trendy historical area with shops, galleries, and historic architecture. The Seine River, you can do a boat cruise, a dinner cruise, walking, bike, all three. So that's something, of course, to check out. The Moulin Rouge. Don't bring your kids there. I had no idea. I didn't go inside, but don't bring your kids to that area. That whole strip is just like a red light district. I had no idea. There's like, I think there's a swinger, like not restaurants, like I don't know what would you call a swinger? It's not like, maybe it's hotel, but I think it's just like a wide open room of swingers. It's very, and then of course there's everything else that you can imagine that comes with the red light district. Um, so some other places, the Musée d'Orsay, the Jardin of Luxembourg. You know, go to inspiredtravelite.com and you can see just a list of other places that you should check out. But you don't need my help for those. But let's get the things you do need my help for. And we're almost done this pod. If you're going to take a day trip, if you want to go somewhere else, sorry, and you, like I said, you've only got 5 or 7 days for Paris, or you've got 5 or 7 days because I don't want you to do less, but you still want to see something else, take a day trip or an overnight trip and take a train somewhere. Don't fly, because if you fly, of course, as we know, the Paris airport is at least an hour out of town. With traffic, it'd be 2 hours. You'll need to get to the airport 1 to 2 hours in advance. You'll probably leave to make it so you're there 3 hours in advance, just in case you miss traffic. All in all, let's say it's 5 hours you leave your hotel before your plane takes off, which sucks. You lose 5 hours, at least 4. Then you land somewhere. I've already went through all this. So if you want to do a day trip and it's going to cost you a little bit more money, make it an overnight trip and take the train. But do not check out the hotel or the Airbnb in Paris, because, as mentioned, time is money. We value your time more than we value $200, because you're never going to remember this $200 extra you spent, or $150, but you will remember this great extra addition to your trip. So don't check out your hotel. Keep it, because you don't have to pack up, drag your bags across town, go check in your new hotel, take your bags on a train, do all the terrible stuff. There's also train stations in Paris. You're carrying stuff up and down stairs all the time. So let's avoid all this hassle and just pack a little backpack with an overnight kit, take the train, be to one of these places I'm going to tell you about in 3 hours, stay overnight there, pay the $1 to $250 for a hotel or Airbnb for just one night. It's fine. But that way you're not checking out before whatever time you have to of the hotel, checking in the next place, then rechecking in when you go back to Paris to a new hotel. And overall, you're losing tons of hours, tons of stress, dragging your bags across France, which again is absolutely miserable. So let's stop rushing and being miserable and stressed by spending an extra $1 to $250 to just have another hotel, a second hotel, and not stay at the one you paid for. It's fine. I know it's not great value, but trust me, it is. It's actually better value for your mind and for your happiness than for that little bit of money you'll never remember a year from then. So 3-hour train rides. If you want to go to wine country, we've got Bordeaux, Alsace, and then you can also go to Etretat, which is on the beach. Deauville. Like what's her name? From Cruella de Vil. There you go. That's easy to remember, isn't it? Or you can go to Bruges in Belgium, which I love, and they've got a bullet train that'll get you there in 3 hours, I think. Oh my God, go to Bruges. I'll do a whole podcast on that. It's the most unexpected, small, quaint place I've been, and I absolutely loved it. It's so cool. It's like how can I explain it? It's like a poor man's Amsterdam, but it's a much less busy, unique, quaint, charming version. I did have a great example of what is like a comparison, but I just love Bruges. It was such a unexpected surprise. And again, it's nothing amazing. It's just this cute little fairy tale town. That's truly like out of a little book. You can take boats through the waterways, and I don't know. I loved it. So, anyways, like I said, take a day trip or an overnight trip. If stay in Paris 7 days, take an overnight trip and go to one of those places I listed: wine country, the beach, Bruges, whatever it is, and then go back. So then you've got, you can leave your hotel at 9 a.m. You just have to get your train 15 minutes in advance, 30 minutes, of course, if you want, and take the train for 3 hours, hop off, go 20 minutes to your hotel. Also, it's nice, the train station in Paris is closer than the airport, so you save a lot of time there. And same thing with most train stations, they're right in the heart of town, where a lot of airports are outside of town. So that's great. So you hop off your train, walk or taxi to your hotel, boom, very quick. This point, you leave at 9, you get there by 1 and checked into your new hotel, instead of going from Paris to Venice and it's 10 a.m. and you land at 11 p.m. by the time you're in hotel, and lose a whole day. Here it's quick. You then have a whole afternoon, night, and then stay the whole next day, and then maybe take the 7 p.m., 8 p.m. train back to Paris. And simple. And then you don't have to do any check-in stuff. You just get to the hotel. You've already checked in with your small bag that you can easily take across town. And you're back in Paris. Easy peasy, stress-free. The overall goal is not to be rushed and to be smart with your time. A few more tips before you wind this up. There's baggage storage companies. So let's say if you do have to wait for an Airbnb, obviously we know hotels, they'll keep your bags for you. Just ask them to. But if you're an Airbnb or whatever other issue you may have encounter, a baggage storage company will keep your bags, and it's just real simple. You can just pay for it, the time, bang, done. Nanny bag is a good one. It's kind of all over Europe and the world, so nice. Do not rent a car. Some other tips for Paris. Let's list them on out. I've driven in Asia, South America, Central America, Europe, like big cities, London, New York, Sydney, all over. I would never drive in Paris, ever. It is an absolute nightmare. It's anxiety everywhere because there's, like I said, it's such a bikeable city that they've got bike lanes everywhere, that there's bikes flying by, there's scooters flying by, and that's just on top of it. You're in a giant city. So you've got that issue as well, where driving in a big city is not for the faint of heart. But this one's just that on steroids with all the bikes, all else. And like I've said before, it's so easy to get around with trains, Ubers, bikes, walking. So a car is not needed. And I mentioned this before, plan to spend more than you think and do spend more than you want to spend just for happiness. I said this at the top where sure you want to budget travel, but sometimes the convenience after a long travel day comes at a cost, whether that's a good meal that just brings your spirits up, a bottle of wine, or 7 bottles of wine. Paying for an Uber, this is a big one. You can take the train, you can do it on a budget. But Paris airport, I said this earlier, to your Airbnb could entail 30 minutes of walking, 40 minutes of walking, an hour on a hot-ish train, stuffed, crammed with people. There's pickpockets in Paris, so you're kind of always like nervous that you might get pickpocketed, even though you're totally fine, but you're still kind of on edge, especially when you first land in a new place. So you know what? Spend $70 on an Uber. Boom. There goes tons of stress. You get dropped off exactly at your door instead of having to walk from your train station 15 minutes or whatever that is, or take a second train and you have to walk to that terminal of the other train and get lost and everything else that comes with adding more steps to your travel day. You just flew for 14 hours, take an Uber, spend the extra money you didn't want to spend. Your happiness, your peace of mind, just your overall, that'll just be as much. It's worth an extra $50. Let me say that. Your peace of mind, your happiness, and also getting there a bit quicker is just worth it. Spend the little extra. I guess that's it. Overall, I said this a billion times, do not rush. Enjoy Paris. Magical, enormous, stunning city. One of my favorites. I was beyond pleasantly surprised. I was there for the Olympics, actually. That's my Olympics hat. So cool. They did such an incredible job. Shout out to the Olympic Committee because it was so easy. Everything was, directions were great. Getting around was great. Everything they could have done and more was perfect. I was expecting the old hurry up and wait stuff that you get with festivals or other big events and costs to be inflated and all else. Exactly the opposite. It was seamless, absolutely seamless. I was one of the greatest trips I've ever had from just a seamless, nice, structured, organized, and all else, no lineups. Loved it. They kept costs down. Beers were like $7, which in what world can you get a $7 beer anymore? They kept it. I think maybe it was $8, but regardless, it was so cheap to have food and drink around the Olympics. So I really appreciate that. And I forgot I want to give them an earlier shout out because I'm sure people aren't listening anymore. But Fraser LeVay, inspiretravel.com, the Fraser LeVay podcast. Learn with Lukai. Go get that book on Amazon. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.